Hi, welcome to my channel. This is Amber Rain Davis from NotableInk.com. Today we're going to be doing some Noline watercolor to create a coffee cup. I don't typically draw my own images, but I was really looking for a large coffee cup and I didn't have one in a stamp set, so we're going to do a quick drawing for this image and watercolor. For the sentiment, I'll be using Simon Says Stamp's Spiritual Sentiment, and we'll be watercoloring with Zig Clean Color Real Brush Pen. I chose a circle die from one of the stacked circle die sets that I have, and I'm just going to use that as a template to draw the rim of the coffee cup. And then really the only thing that I'm drawing is the handle, so there's just not much drawing involved in this, which is good because I'm not a drawer. I can do Zentangle, which is repeated patterns, but in terms of drawing characters and things like that, it's not going to happen. So here I'm just checking to make sure I have enough space for my sentiment. I was thinking that I might want it in the center of the coffee cup, but if that didn't work out, I wanted to have space at the bottom. Then I'm just going to take an eraser and lighten up my lines just a little bit. I want to make sure it doesn't show through the watercolor. So next you're going to see just some swatches that I did with the zigs to try and pick some colors, and I have those listed there on the notation. This is flesh colored right there. And then I'm just using some clean clear water with a Silver Company Black Velvet number 4 round brush there. So just using some clean clear water to soften up those edges. I find when I'm using the zig pens that if I work in small sections, I can get the color to move more. If I put down too much color in a large area, I feel like it's a little harder to move the color because by the time I get to some of it, it's already dried or soaked into the paper. I'm not really sure what the mechanics of that are. So you can see here I'm just going to do partially around the circle and then work on that so that I don't have too much down at a time. This color I think was the dark brown. This is the dark brown color here. And same idea. I'm not going to get too bent out of shape about the little bit that went into the coffee rim because, you know, maybe the coffee splashed over and it's on the rim of the cup. So that seems to make sense to me, so I'm just going to leave that alone. And then I put down more of the pigment that time around, so I'm going to try and work faster. You know, looking at this on the video, I probably could have used a larger brush, and that might have sped things up for me a little bit. Because the 4 round didn't hold a whole lot of water. Now this color here, I did not use this color after this. I'll try and put down in the comments what this color was, but see how it has that green tone? I didn't like that at all. So I'm just softening these edges and then I'm going to cover that up with more of that dark brown. So this is kind of mimicking a latte where, you know, they do the cream art in the cup. So you've probably all seen those little hearts or the fleur-de-lis that they do. And so that's what I was going for here. And you've probably heard a lot of artists talk about your watercolor is going to look really bad before it starts to look good. That is so true. I mean, this is a hot mess right now. It does not look good at all, but it is going to get better. So the important thing when you get to this point is just to keep going. It's a piece of paper. You probably heard Sandy Allnock say this before. It's a piece of paper. It's probably already ruined if you're thinking that it's not going good. So you might as well go to the end and learn something from it. So I just kept going and kept adding color here. That was more of the dark brown. That kind of more caramel color is the beige color. And then that lightest color in the middle, as you saw, was flesh. So we're just going to keep going around and adding additional color. So the inspiration for this card, I was rushing to get to my daughter's soccer game when I opened up the mailbox to get this package, and I left my coffee sitting on the kitchen counter. And once I opened up the stamp set, the first sentiment that I saw was "God knew my heart needed you," and I really needed my coffee. So that's how this card design came about. The first thing I thought about was coffee with this sentiment. So it's looking slightly better here. It definitely needs more of the dark brown, so I'm just adding that. Kind of sketchy, trying to get that cream look to it. And I'm going to add some clean, clear water in some areas and then use the zig marker over that so it's more of a diffuse look. And we'll add more of that beige in so that it gets that caramel tone. So this is actually the second version of the card that I did. The first time around, I cut a circle mask and I cut a heart mask and I did some ink blending, and that was a disaster. It was so structured and the edges were so sharp. It did not look like flowing cream or coffee at all. It looked like a real, it was just ugly. I didn't like it at all. So it's rare that I toss a card. It's rare that I completely start over. I did get all the way to the end of that card because same thing. I wanted to kind of force myself to see, okay, well, was it going to get better? It did not get better. I went as far as to heat emboss the sentiment over top of the cream, and it was just ugly. So I let that sit, and I made a bunch of other cards, and then I still wanted to do this card design for whatever reason, like I needed to do it. And so I came back to this and we did some watercolor. So now what I'm going to do is add some shading around the rim of the cup and the handle so that we can start to see that this is a coffee cup. So this color is the mid gray, which is actually it's a really nice warm gray. I actually like this color quite a bit. So I laid down a little bit of color to start with, and then I'm going to add more where I've got the clean clear water already down. Once you have the clean clear water on your paper and you put your zigs down, it's not going to go down as concentrated, and it's going to flow a little bit better on your paper. It's going to move easier because you already have the water down. When you put the marker down on dry paper, it takes a little more effort to get it to move. So that's just something to note. I didn't mention this paper that I'm working on is Fabriano Artistico Extra White Hot Press paper. I had this already cut and ready to go from a previous card that I did. Normally I use hot press paper if I'm going to be stamping because it's a smoother surface. It makes it a little bit easier to stamp on. In this particular case, I really could have used any kind of watercolor paper since it was just a pencil drawing. So we can see that coffee cup is really starting to take shape. And I actually really like how it's looking at this point. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm just feeling it to see how wet it is, whether it's dried. And I'm not really sure why, because I'm not painting next to it, so it's not like it was going to bleed or anything. So just finishing up here. And then once I get the rim done, I am going to add just a little touch of shading to the rim and the handle itself. I felt like it looked too flat and needed a little bit of shading in those areas to make it appear a little rounded, a little more realistic. Not that this looks realistic, but you know what I mean. So just blending out those edges. And I'm sorry, I got a bit of an allergy attack right before recording this, so that's why I sound kind of stuffy. So I'm going to use that same mid-gray, and I just have the Altenew watercolor palette over here to the side. I scribbled on some mid-gray. I'm going to test that on my test sheet over here. I still think that's way too dark, so I'm adding some more water. I'm going to test that out, and I think that's watered down enough. So I'm just going to take this to the rim and add, I really just wanted a touch of color, but I didn't want it to be a line, so right now I'm trying to figure out, okay, how does this look? I wasn't really entirely sure. Did I want the shadow in the middle of the rim? Did I want it closer to the outside, closer to the inside? So I'm just kind of testing the waters and seeing what looks the best. So we're going to move on to the handle there, and then we'll go around the rest of the rim of the cup. And at this point, I'm really liking how this is turning out. And I'm thinking about my sentiment and where I want to put that. I kind of almost don't want to put it over the cream now because I'm digging how it looks. So I'm really happy with how this turned out, and kind of surprised really, because I've never attempted to do anything like this before, where I've drawn something or started from scratch with a watercolor and without a stamp, really. So I don't know if that's something that you guys do, but maybe this will inspire you to give this a try. It's a pretty simple shape, especially if you've got a round object that you can draw a circle around. The rim of the die seemed to be perfect for the rim of the cup, so that was great in order to do that inside and outside line. But I think I may try, I don't know what shape I'll pick next, but I think I would like to try maybe something else in watercolor, something else like this in a future video. If you have any comments of maybe something that you'd like to see, I don't know if I can do it. I'll give it a shot, but leave me a comment down below if you have any suggestions. And so I'm just softening out that there was bits of lines up there, and I'm just softening that out so it's not so stark. And then I'll just erase that line from where we drew around the die. I die cut the paper to an A2 sized card front. For the sentiment, I'm going to stamp it in VersaFine Onyx black ink onto some Bazzill 40-pound vellum. And then I'm going to clear heat emboss it. I tried to only stamp it in the ink, and while it was drying, so I let it sit to dry, and it started to bleed, almost like it was feathering out into the wrinkles of the paper. So I'm wondering if this isn't the best ink for vellum. I'm gonna have to do a little research on that. But the heat embossing did fine. So if you are going to use that ink, then I would recommend clear heat embossing over it so that it doesn't bleed. So I'll just go ahead and I don't think that I treated the paper before I did that, but it seemed to turn out just fine. And then when you're heat embossing on vellum, you want to make sure you keep your heat tool moving. I wanted to give it a little extra something, so I really like to do my splatters with jet black ink spray. So I tap off as much as the ink as I possibly can into the bottle before I flick it, and I seem to get really good and consistent results that way. So that's my preferred method for adding black splatters. And I went ahead and put the piece of vellum around the bottom. So after I did all that effort, at that point I didn't want to cover up the coffee cup, so I went ahead and set it at the bottom. I'm going to use a piece of sticky back fun foam, and that'll help to keep the watercolor card really nice and straight. It tends to get a little bit warped when you're using all the water on the paper, so that kept it nice and straight. And then I'll just put that onto an A2 size card base. And this card is complete. I hope that you enjoyed this card today. It was something a little bit different from my channel. I hope it inspires you to try and freehand draw something and watercolor, maybe some basic shapes. If you did enjoy this video, please hit the subscribe button below and be sure to subscribe to my blog at notableink.com so that you don't miss any future videos and posts. Thank you so much for stopping by, and have a great day.